really do feel like
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Love the Darkness T-shirt.
You like? They're a great. They're a great band. We actually have the bass player scheduled for next month when they're in town. So.
Oh, fantastic! I didn't realize they were coming to town. I didn't realize they were on tour. Right?
Yes, they are.
Oh, that's great.
So first of all, I got to thank Adi Napolitano for putting us together.
Yeah.
Another great musician and a friend of both of ours.
Yeah, lovely guy, great guy.
He is a lovely guy. So you got a hell of a story to tell. I mean, if you go on your website, it is very in depth. And if people want to learn about you, they can go on there and find out like every intricate thing. But you've been doing this a long time.
I have. Yeah, straight out of college. Yeah. So I not long out of college, I started teaching at another college, and got wind through another guitarist that Carl Palmer was looking for a guitarist. So I sent him a CD, and he liked it, and I've been playing with him ever since, and that was 20 years ago.
That's amazing.
Hey, Paul, it's Mark. You're coming up on 20 years playing with them.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It'll be March of next year. So probably around this time 20 years ago, I was when I was kind of getting the CD together to send to him.
And how can you be 12?
Right. Well, yeah. For the first 10 years in the band, there was a few clubs that were quite concerned that I wasn't old enough to play there, especially when Carl would joke on stage that my mum and dad had given me permission to be out late that night.
Congratulations to you for looking so youthful. I wish I could.
Yeah, you're doing good. So when you were a little kid, you started off doing a lot of gymnastics as a kid.
Yeah.
And you were heavy into it.
That's right, yeah.
And then Santa Claus came down the chimney one year and brought you a gift.
This is true.
What happened?
Yeah, this is true. Well, I always grew up around guitars. My dad played guitar, so my earliest musical memories really were of singing Beatles songs while my dad accompanied us. And as you say, I was heavy into the gymnastics. I would go for national competitions, and this was around the age of 10 or 11, and train 4 times a week. So real heavy training session, and it wasn't great for a child of that age, and it really took its toll on my body. So I got a groin injury at like the age of 11, so it just wasn't good for my body. So in the end, I decided to stop and replace one obsession with another. So I kind of poured the obsession I had for gymnastics into the guitar, and here I am.
So let me ask you, John asked the question, Santa came down the chimney, brought you your guitar. Where was that chimney? Where did you grow up?
That chimney was in Lancashire in England. About 30 minutes from Manchester.
Okay, yeah. So for our listeners, they knew that you didn't have a Boston accent like us. So it was quite obvious.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I now live in Dartmouth, which is South Coast.
I was going to say not far from us. That's for sure. You are slowly but surely being turned into a New Englander.
Absolutely. I no longer say the letter Z; it's a Z now, and various other things. Yeah.
How long have you been in? I'm sorry. How long have you been in Dartmouth?
So I was on tour in 2011, and a promoter was promoting 2 of our shows. One of our shows was in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and the other in Fall River, Massachusetts. And that promoter is now my wife. So she got more than she bargained for when she booked the band. Yeah. So 2011 is when we met, and then I kind of started coming over from to visit, kind of late, mid to late 2012 onwards, and slowly move my stuff over one suitcase at a time.
There you go. So before we get into the Kyle Palmer thing, you were a teacher, and
Yes,
you were writing for guitar magazines.
that's right. Yeah, I did that for many years. Yeah, but both transcriptions and the thing that I did most was the guitar magazines and a lot of publications, music publications, didn't want to pay copyright or couldn't afford to pay copyright. So if there was going to be a feature on, say, Jeff Beck or Eric Clapton or Steve Vai, they didn't want to have to pay to use their music. So they would get me to write something in the style of Jeff Beck or Steve Vai and record it and use it as a lesson. So that's what I did for a good many years. I don't know, maybe 5 years, something like that. I did that column. And another column I did for the guitar magazines was I took classical pieces and arranged them for electric guitar. So I did that for a couple of years as well.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, because I saw the video of you playing, I forget who it was, but side by side, two guitars, and you were playing a classical. I forget who it was, but I saw that long before I've heard of you, long before I knew who you were as a guest, or,
Right.
But how long, that must be very complicated to take a classical piece like that and turn it into another genre, another instrument.
Yeah, well, I guess it is, and I think a lot of people do find it complicated. But when I was 16, I went to a classical music college. Really, well, it was a course at a college, and I played electric guitar. I kind of started seriously on the electric guitar at the age of 11. So I went there as a guitarist, but a large amount of the curriculum was about classical piano, and I just fell in love with the classical piano. Fell in love with Debussy and Chopin, and thinking, I've played guitar for such a long time, a third of my life. This whole 5 years that I've played for guitar, I don't want it to go to waste, and I'm far too old to learn another instrument. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to take these classical pieces and play them on guitar. So I was really a frustrated pianist, and of course it was tough to start off with, but then you start kind of thinking like that, and that has become a big way which I think of the instrument. I don't really think of the instrument as a regular guitarist would do. I think of it more as kind of coming from all of these piano pieces that I've learnt. So yeah, I call myself a classical pianist trapped in an electric guitarist's body. I think that's a good.
Yeah, that's very obvious, because the audition tape that you sent in to Kyle Palmer, you had on it The Flight of the Hippopotamus.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In that alone, that is just a total crazy, brilliant guitar solo, and it shows range. It shows just everything: speed, accuracy, fun, craziness, feelings, everything in like a 1 minute piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to play that
wow.
We're going to play that right now for our listeners, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk to you about how you wrote that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
how do you write something like that?
So that was actually written for a guitar magazine. I was really young when I did that. I was very early 20s when I did that. So the basic premise of that is, in music theory, usually you would divide a beat into one note or two notes or four notes or eight notes or 16 notes or 30-second notes. So you would split it into these divisions, which kind of all multiply by themselves, so from 2 to 4 to 8. But there's a certain thing called a polyrhythm, which goes against the grain of those subdivisions, and it kind of goes against the feel of the music. And one polyrhythm is a group of 5, so you squeeze 5 notes into a beat. Now, a way of counting polyrhythms, rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a good way of counting polyrhythms is to find a word that fits with the number of syllables in the word fits with the counting. So hippopotamus is a word that you can use for 5. So hippopotamus, 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 and then you are counting in 5s. So what I did is I took loosely the melody of Flight of the Bumblebee by Rimsky-Korsakov, which is in 4s, but made it 5s, so it kind of accented different notes on the beat, and thus the Flight of the Hippopotamus was born. So that's what that was all about.
That's great.
Excellent. That's pretty cool.
I mean, there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah. So that is clearly, a young kid with too much time on his hands and no girlfriend.
Well, all that extra time paid off, didn't
it you had a passion for it. That's obvious. And that's what's made it your life's work, right? I mean, that's why you stuck with it and why you've succeeded the way you have. It takes a special love for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been passionate about music for as long as I wasn't passionate about gymnastics.
So I notice on your website you have swag. You have a pretty cool T-shirt that's out there. You have downloads. You can get an album. So if people go to Paul Bielatowicz, and I'm going to spell that for you, BIELATOWICZ.com, you can get it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's you get a bunch of stuff on there, which is great, and we'll go on there and check it out, and we'll tag the website in our notes so everyone can get the spelling correctly.
Also, for the fans and the audience to go to, make sure you follow his Patreon page, because that always helps. And there's a lot of things that he does on the Patreon page that will excite you, and it gives you an opportunity to support him.
And you're talking about following.
Thanks, guys.
While you're listening, follow Musicians and Beyond on Instagram, and follow Paul too. No, really, do it. Go and do it right now. Follow us, follow him. You won't be disappointed. We have some great guests in the past. We have an incredible guest now with stories, that just go on and on and on. I never knew about that hippopotamus count.
That's pretty cool. That's a great story.
That is a great story.
Now, what's it like? John said before we get there, but I can't wait to hear. I mean, you're playing with Carl Palmer, and obviously what a body of work and what a history to play in that legacy band and follow in the shoes of the people that have been there. What's that like?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it was, joining his band at such an early age. It was a huge lesson to me. Very, very formative. I mean, there's the music, of course, and the loyal fans and the people who are really passionate about the music. But also, there's just the experience of touring when you visit a country or a city and you're the guests of honor there. I mean, that was a wild experience to have as an early 20-year-old. So, yeah, it's been fantastic. It really has. And when you're at college, people people will tell you, well, you don't spend too much time on like guitar solos because 90% of what you do is going to be rhythm guitar, and and then you'll take a guitar solo like a few times a night. For me, my entire career has just been one big guitar solo. So I feel very lucky to be able to be in a band which will allow me to do that.
That's pretty cool. And Paul, when you're out there, are you guys playing originals or are you playing Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
It's all it's either ELP or it is like arrangements of classical pieces. So Toccata and Fugue by Bach, that sort of thing, which ELP never did, but we do a few arrangements of our own. But yeah, not really original stuff. I think the main reason behind that is that Carl was never one of the main writers in ELP, and it's Carl's band, and Carl really wants to direct musically, so that really means doing ELP stuff or doing arrangements.
And does he write everything, or do you help him, or does the band collaborate with that, or how does that work with you guys?
So for the arrangements, so for people not familiar with the band, it's Emerson, Lake and Palmer music. Mostly 90% of the music we play is Emerson, Lake and Palmer music. But of course, Emerson, Lake and Palmer was a keyboard band. It was keyboard, bass, and guitar for the most part. So instead of keyboards, we have guitars. So that's where I come in and play the keyboard parts on guitars. So there's obviously a lot of arrangement that goes into that, and usually what we do is me and the bass player will do all of the kind of the meat of the arrangement at home, and we'll correspond via Zoom or via email and just send each other charts of how we're working out the parts, and then we'll get into the room with Carl when we've basically worked out the parts, but worked out how it's going to go between us, and he'll kind of make decisions on chopping certain sections or using a different sound for this section, that sort of thing. So he acts more as a producer, I guess, and we're the arrangers.
Right. And it's nice that he takes your opinion in your music and puts it in, just kind of tweaks it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now, Paul, when you guys are doing that kind of back office work, putting things together, building the music, you're in Dartmouth. Where is everybody else when you're doing the Zoom?
So it's just me and Simon that put it together, but he's in London.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do it long distance, and it works fine because because it is very prescribed and music, and we're doing arrangements of songs that have already been written, and it's all classical stuff. We can work off charts, and we can send each other charts and send each other recordings. So it's a really good way of working.
Interesting.
So I have to know something. All the crazy sounds that you produce out of your guitar, it's like amazing. Just in the hippopotamus, it's crazy. You have like semi-animal sounds, it's fun, just emotion. How do you come up with all these like sounds? Do you just sit there and say, I want to see if I can make something sound like a, whatever?
Yeah. I mean, there are in the Flight of the Hippopotamus, there are actually hippopotamus samples that I got, I grabbed. But like for example, in Flight of the Hippopotamus, there's a bit of like really staccato muting. And that was done by taking some toilet paper and shoving it under the strings, so it mutes it, so it's the notes barely ring out. And that was I knew I had I wanted that short staccato sound, and it was the first time I ever tried it. It worked great, so we recorded it, and that was that. But yeah, sometimes you just stumble across these sounds, and put them into a mental memory bank. I'll have to use that sometime. I used to use an electric toothbrush on stage, combined with a whammy pedal, and it makes the wildest noise when you put it next to the pickup. So again, obviously something I just discovered by accident when my toothbrush got too close to the pickups.
Can I ask you why you had your toothbrush by your
I don't
Why you
know.
did that, I have no idea.
I'm guessing there's a story and other instruments involved. The girl,
I, s- I-
his instrument, and then I don't know what his guitar was doing there at the moment.
So
I did. I did soon learn. Because when I used to play it, I used to, because obviously if you're in a big venue, people can't see what it is. So I'd pick it up and I would brush my teeth with it to show people what it was.
Yeah.
But I soon learned that this toothbrush was invariably lying on the dirtiest floors in the whole of the country. So soon learned not to actually brush my teeth with it because you get a mouthful of grit and grime. But
I was thinking across the world, dental hygienists right then were cringing.
Exactly.
so you're very you use everything around you to make all of these sounds. I mean, look at Van Halen. They used to use an electric drill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And speaking of Van Halen, first of all, I sent you a picture, a side picture that you're going to enjoy. So later on,
Cool.
open that up. But that was kind of the reason why you wanted to be a rock star.
Eddie Van Halen was a huge influence. Yeah. The reason I picked up the guitar, like the electric guitar, and wanted to go for the electric guitar was Mark Knopfler. But there's been kind of 3 or 4 big guitarists that have really influenced me. And the next big one after Mark Knopfler was Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen, I remember hearing it, and I heard it obviously quite a lot later than it was released. I remember hearing Eruption and just not knowing what I was hearing. I just couldn't believe that this instrument that I played is capable of those sounds. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think when you talk to guitarists around the world, anyone that grew up in the 70s and 80s, and everyone goes back to Eddie. I mean, how can you not?
Yeah.
Who are the others that you said 4 at least? Who are the other 2 that you'd throw out?
So Steve Vai was a huge influence, and Jimi Hendrix, a lot of the blues guys. But I'd say those are the big 4: was Steve Vai, Eddie Van Halen, Hendrix, and Mark Knopfler.
That's awesome. Now that we're throwing names out, you've been on tour for quite a while. You've been out there. Before we move off the ELP stage of your life or piece of your life, who have you been on tour with that really blew you away, that you've been on the road and just said, wow, this has been so much fun sharing the stage?
That's a good question. Some highlights. I've recently done some work with Jordan Rudess of Dream Theater, and just a musical monster. If ever there was a genetic being made for music, it's Jordan Rudess, and not only his ability, because he's got the most insane perfect pitch. I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying that he says throughout the day he kind of jams in his head and is kind of riffing and kind of thinking of ideas in his head, and we were talking about the difference of him playing guitar and playing keyboards. He said, on the guitar, I've got to stop and think about where those notes are. But on keyboards, when he hears something, anything, there's no time between him hearing it and knowing exactly what key it is. So he can think of an idea and doesn't even have to think about where it is on the keyboard, can just play it. Kind of as you or me can think of words and just say them, he's the same with music, which is just
wild,
astounding for me. That I am not like that at all. That's I have to work. I have to I've improved my ear and I've practiced at that stuff. But he has such an innate ability, which is amazing. So I've met a few talented people like that. There's another girl called Rachel Flowers. I don't know if you've come across her. But her primary instrument is the piano or keyboards, but she also plays everything else. So I just did a prog festival back in, was it February this year? And at the end, to close out the festival, me and Rachel played a duet of Debussy's Clair de Lune. And she played it on flute. And we got together to have a quick go-through, but when she played flute, I wasn't plugged in. She couldn't hear my guitar. So instead of like playing flute along with me, she just listened and imagined herself playing it and said, "Yeah, I've got it." We didn't even have a run through. We played it in a completely different key, and she was note perfect. So yeah, again, another incredible. And she's blind. You know, one of the incredible musicians that you just natural talent. So yeah.
Well, you said it. You know, it innate, when it's innate and you can do it like
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
beyond. You know,
Yeah.
someone like yourself. You know, you say it's passion. You work at it very, very hard. For some
Yeah.
people, it's their first language, let alone
Yeah.
you know, second.
For sure, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've got to say, of course, for those two people as well, it is their passion. When Jordan isn't playing keyboards, he's playing guitar. You know, what do you do in your spare time? Oh, I play this different instrument as a hobby.
How
It's
do
just
you-
all about music.
Can you do that?
Sorry.
Can you do
Do-
that? Do you play other instruments?
Well, I mean, I dabble, but I dabble on piano, but primarily my instrument is guitar. Yeah.
So you could play, you know, piano for John and I's band, and John and I can't even sing or dance.
Speak for yourself. I'm a good dancer. So on your 20 years on the road, you know, in the big time, our last guest told us some incredible stories of crazy fans. So we had
Right.
Liberty DeVito he was with Billy Joel for 30 years. He was our last guest.
Right.
Do you have any stories that you can share with our viewers and listeners that are rated R or PG or G?
Oh.
And remember, your wife may be listening.
You know, funnily enough, you know, people joke about groupies, but certainly with the ELP crowd, it's there's no groupies there. It's, you know, my wife is more comfortable when I'm on tour than when I'm at home, I think, with my whereabouts. So yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like that goes on, and also it's such a muso music, you know. Anybody who wasn't a fan of ELP back in the 70s that's at our show is a musician, and they're there to, and it's usually a guy, and if there's a girl in the audience, they've come to support their boyfriend. So yeah, so no, we don't really, not any of those wild fan stories. I've got a few kind of darker, stalkerish ones, but I'd worry about telling those in case they listen to this and and are triggered by it. So
Yep. We don't want anyone getting hurt over this. You know, Paul, you mentioned something. You said that your wife feels more comfortable when you're out on the road. You said it jokingly, but
yeah,
for yourself and for your family, it takes a special kind of person to be able to be a musician or in the family of a musician.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is a unique lifestyle. The traveling, it's particularly seeing as my wife does not like to travel at all. So she never ever comes on the road and would never want to. Yeah, but you know, on the flip side, it's been our norm. I met her while I was on the road, and this has been our relationship all the time, except for the pandemic. The only time we experienced me not being on the road for a year plus was the pandemic. But yeah, other than that, it's our norm. But yeah, I mean, I love it. If I'm at home too long, you know, not saying anything about home, but if I'm at home too long, I'm itching to get out again, itching for the adventure of the road. Yeah,
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Excellent.
Now, let's step away from ELP and being on tour. What are your other side projects that you're doing?
So I over the pandemic, I wrote quite a few projects, one of which was a soundtrack to Nosferatu, the 1922 movie. I saw that the 100th anniversary was coming up, so I thought it was a timely thing to do. And another thing, on my Patreon page, I set about writing all my patrons one song each. So I thought a good way of achieving that would be to do bigger projects like a soundtrack where each person gets a scene dedicated to them. So yeah, so I've got a tour of the Nosferatu show coming up. So we play with a live band along with the movie. So that's going to be in October. Dates around here will be Narrow Centre for the Arts in Fall River, and that's on the 28th of October. And on the 29th of October, we're playing the Regent Theatre in Arlington, Massachusetts.
Oh, beautiful. Right down the street from me.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. It's a Sunday matinee show.
Excellent. So tell me about writing the soundtrack to a movie, especially a movie like that, because that's a heck of a movie. And
yeah, right, yeah.
How do you, I mean, it's an old movie, obviously 1922. So it's got some dark features to it. It's got the old style. Do you try and bring the soundtrack to that era? Or do you try and, modernize it a bit?
Yeah, no, I tried to modernize it. And also I tried to, I mean, there is elements of kind of traditional scoring in there. So that there's string parts and there's, it's more of a string quartet rather than the big orchestral thing. But yeah, I try to. Lots of people have done soundtracks to that movie, and so I purposely tried to do something completely different. So put the emphasis on a different emotion. So at the end, the very final scene was the scene that I wrote first. I wrote a piece called Sunlight Sonata, and obviously we all know what happens. Well, if you don't know what happens at the end of Nosferatu, the first movie about a vampire, it involves sunlight, and it does not end well for the vampire. But I try to make it kind of an emotional, mournful, kind of subdued, sad moment where the vampire dies, and there's also the heroine in it. She kind of sacrifices herself. So rather than having the big, exciting, dramatic, diminished chords that you would expect in a silent movie like that, I tried to make it a really tender piece. So yeah, I try to approach it different from that point of view.
So that's really interesting, because I'm thinking about the process of you watch the movie. Are you taking it in parts? Like, do you break it down really by scene by scene by scene?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I did. And also I wanted to not necessarily do a traditional soundtrack for it. My initial plan when I was working on it was it kind of came inspired by how the Dark Side of the Moon supposedly fits with the Wizard of Oz, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I wrote an album that fits a movie, but I don't tell anybody about it, and there's subtle hints in there. And then I just kind of failed on the subtle hints, and I failed on the not telling anybody about it, and now I'm going out and playing it live with the movie. But I approached it very much from I wanna make an album. So all of the tracks, many of the scenes are unrelated. Many of them are related. So you do have themes coming back. So for example, that Sunlight Sonata piece I told you about, the first time we hear that theme is the first time that Count Orlok sees a photo of Ellen, who ultimately results in his demise, and we kind of get echoes of that theme coming throughout the film. But other than that, each scene is a different track. Each scene is a different song or piece of music on the album.
Have you seen this growing into a cult like Rocky Horror Picture Show? Is this happening?
Yeah.
No kidding.
I would love to. That is my. I mean, we did it as a one-off show last year, and then I did a solo tour of it where I took my band with me on TV screens. I got them all to individually record their parts, and I had two large screens either side of the main projector screen, and so I took them on the road that way, and it is kind of growing. Yeah, it's so now we're doing a full tour of theatres coming up in October. So but I would love to have this band and this project, not necessarily Nosferatu all the time, but different silent movies as kind of Halloween's answer to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Yeah.
And who are the members in that band?
So coming up on this tour, we have got a drummer called Leah Bluestein, sorry, and she's from Boston. She lives in Boston now, and we've got Mike Dutko, who also is in Boston. So that's the live portion of the band, and then I'm also using the screens to have pre-recorded takes from. I've got Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater on keyboards for playing on that. I've got Bumblefoot, who was in Guns N' Roses for about 10 years. Amazing guitar player. We've got a cellist from the New Bedford Symphony Orchestra called Peter Zay is on there. We've got Arthur Brown of the crazy world of Arthur Brown, the god of hellfire himself, who is doing narration on it. There are people I'm forgetting. There's Dave Bainbridge from a band called Iona, and he's in the Strawbs as well. He's playing keyboards on it as well. Simon Fitzpatrick from Carl Palmer's band. He's on Chapman Stick. So yeah, so all of these kind of guest musicians, they come in and out on different screens, all synced to the main movie.
That's
Right. So
cool.
through your years of being a musician, you've probably met another 1,000 musicians.
Yeah.
How do you pick the people that you want to be in your band?
Well, that's a good question. Funnily enough, it largely comes down to personality, because I think you get to a level where, especially if you're writing music and you're asking people to play specific parts. I mean, the musicians I'm playing with are fantastic, but musicians of that level will be able to play the parts. So it comes down to personalities. Yeah, and I always say, whenever someone says, "Have you got any advice for a young musician?" My advice is, don't be a dick. Just be a nice person who is eager, positive, gets along with everyone. I've toured for 20 years. I've never known anybody be fired from a touring band or whether musician or crew. I've never known anybody be fired for not being good at their job. It's anyone who's ever been fired is always down to their attitude.
I know a couple of people that must not have gotten that memo.
Yeah, definitely.
But don't be a dick memo. Print those up. We can give them out at the next.
I think from our last guest, we learned that you can still be successful, even though you're.
Yeah, possibly. Allegedly.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
yeah. It's a bit different if you're, the lead dick.
It's amazing that the world is so big, but the music world is really so small. If someone is a dick, it kind of gets around the whole music industry.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. So it could make it break you, for an opportunity down the road.
Absolutely. I know of people who won't be asked back on to various festivals or by various people, and sometimes those small promoters that are promoting the seemingly insignificant event will go on to much bigger things, and all of a sudden certain people can't do bigger things because of that small promoter that they treated badly.
Now here's a question that I ask every now and then. Is there one stage or one location that you've played that you can't wait to get back to, that you just love playing it, whether it's the audience or the environment, but you look forward to getting back to that?
Specific location, nothing springs to mind about a specific location, but I mean specific countries, definitely. Like South America is always South America, Italy, I find like the warm climates tend to be warm audiences. Um, I really we don't tour Europe so much anymore, but when we used to tour Europe, we used to play such a wide variety of venues that it was always really exciting going on tour in Europe. So we could be playing, for want of a better description, a bar in Amsterdam, and then the very next night we're playing to a packed Roman amphitheater, and it was just so varied and it made it so exciting. So yeah, that variety, I think I really like the variety in touring.
I'm going to piggyback on that. Is there a place that you haven't played that you want to play?
I haven't played it. I think somewhere like Red Rocks would be cool to play. Yeah, some of those iconic places. Some places that I've played and didn't realize that it was, going to be such a great place and an iconic place would be the Grand Ole Opry. I knew nothing about it before we played there, and everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, but that's really famous." So I checked it out. And where else? We played the site of Woodstock in upstate New York. I can't remember the name of this. Bethel Woods Amphitheater. Yep. Yeah.
Wembley Stadium.
Wembley Stadium would be fantastic. No, I've never played there.
Wilbur Theatre.
Wilbur Theatre. I have played the Wilbur. Yeah.
I figured I'd throw that in there.
Yeah. Well, one of my my early experiences of playing in the US, and I thought, coming over to the US, playing in the US, it would always be like this. But in 2006, and it's still a really special venue for me. We were playing at BB King's, which is great. I love it there, and that's since closed. But the night before, I went to see Les Paul play his residency at the Iridium, and got the opportunity to get up and play with him, and played a couple of songs with him. Wow. And that was amazing. So that was a real highlight.
You can check that off your to-do list.
Not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, so for that reason, Iridium is a special venue.
Excellent. What do you have for big projects coming up?
So I've got the Nosferatu tour coming up, and after that we're going to record it. So we have many of the parts already recorded. Jordan's recorded all of his parts, and Bumblefoot has done a guest part. So we're going to record it after that, and then we're going to release it. Probably looking at a release date of early next year. And then in November, I'm out on December, I'm out on tour with Carl. That's another US tour plus Japan. And then early next year, I'll be doing another solo tour. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. I've promised a multimedia show with some element of interactivity, and I'm putting it together now, kind of brainstorming ideas. But the way that I often work is I book a tour, promise something, and then have to deliver on that promise. So that's kind of the way I trick myself into doing these things. So it's going to have some sort of audience participation, people maybe voting on elements of a story, kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure. So I'm going to be putting that together for next year.
Geez, your mind never stops.
It's occurred. Yeah.
Yeah, your mind never stops. This has really been amazing. For our listeners and viewers, we are talking with Paul Bielatowicz, and he is a musician, singer, songwriter, and just an all-around awesome guy. So go on to all the social media and follow him. Go to his website, buy some swag, download some awesome music, find out what's up and coming.
And tell us what the Patreon page name is.
It is patreon.com/Paul Bielatowicz. So my full name.
And that, again, that's Bielatowicz. And So yeah, Paul, thanks so much, man. I mean, we
Absolutely.
learned so much, Mark, today. This was great. The whole thing with the counting of the words with the hippopotamus. I mean, that I
Listen,
never knew that
the
before. That was pretty cool.
highlight for me was that you got his name right.
Mark, I gotta be honest. I was up I didn't even sleep last night. I was up all last night.
Paul, you wouldn't believe
Bielatowicz.
he practices and then he'll convince himself of something. He'll get on there and bang.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I will admit I screw it up 99% of the time. So I'm not even going to pronounce your name again because I know if I do it again, it won't come out.
You know, I did. I did a gig in where was it? Plymouth, Massachusetts, and the promoter was like a compere, and he was going to introduce me, and I saw him pacing up and down for like 10 minutes before I went on stage and just saying my name, Bielatowicz, 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 and you know, like as if I wasn't there, as if I couldn't hear it, and he was just saying it out loud for 10 minutes. And then, you know, had his final spurts of Bielatowicz, and then went up onto the stage and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Peter Bielatowicz." I said, "You absolutely nailed my surname."
Before we go and say goodbye, I want to know, as you're playing out there with Kyle Palmer, they have so many unbelievable, iconic songs that, you know, everyone of all ages knows. Do you personally have a favorite?
Yeah, I like the epics. I've always liked the epics in prog rock, so I'd say Tarkus. Tarkus is always a big highlight for me. You know, jumping from one section to another, yeah. I like anything that lasts for more than 20 minutes.
I like it. And no pun intended, but what a lucky man you are.
Yes,
really?
it's very true. Very true.
You add a great vibe to the band, and it was good timing. Everything worked out perfect, and you know, you're killing it out in the road round.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty excited for you. We're so happy that you came into studio via Zoom and sat with us, spent some time with us. And we like to think that everyone that comes into the studio or shares a moment on stage or on the show with us becomes a friend. So we'd like to thank you for coming in here and being our friend. And we look forward to continuing that friendship and seeing you further down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Awesome.